you have no idea how many people you walk by in the street every day who are on drugs. So we're talking about a whole society that is really not using this too much and not using this too much, but we're controlled by drugs. A lot of people. I mean, there's a great percentage, almost 50% of the American population, for example, is taking drugs. I mean, strong drugs that affect the way of thinking.
Yeah.
This is also another problem. So we've got all of these problems. However, we've also got solutions. You began this by asking a liturgical question. And I'd like to address that because we have a lot of people who are very upset with things liturgical today. We have a pope who's upset about things liturgical today. All right, good.
Yeah.
You just described something that I thought when I was listening to, I could identify with beautifully. Your parents took you to Mass. They took you to worship God. You worshiped God. You worshiped God, and you received from God his own body, blood, soul, and divinity in Holy Communion. That, for the most part, stopped 50 years ago. And rather than worshiping God, we turned in on ourselves. This is exactly the problem we're talking about with narcissism. It's communal narcissism. We turned in on ourselves. The community turned in. We all hold hands and we make a circle. That's not it.
Yes.
That's not worshiping God. That's not worshiping God.
I think we've begun to understand in some partial way what they tried to do at the Second Vatican Council and in the years after, as there was a kind of war between those who wanted to carry it very far forward and others who wanted to restrain. But what they intended to do, what they said they wanted to do, was to make the message of Christ, the person of Christ, more available to the world rather than keep him somehow in the sacristy, in the liturgy. And then instead, they actually fell short of their goal in the most silly way.
Mm-hmm.
And they made the 1970s the standard for the eternal church. And even the present Pope and the circle around him somehow are looking back to the 70s and the 60s as a supreme tradition.
Amazing.
And only now, in 2023 and these coming years, will we finally escape that 60 years, or it's getting close to 70 years since the beginning of the Second Vatican Council, where they wanted notionally to not have neurotic, externalistic, closed church and liturgy. And they wanted to open it up, and then they closed it right back up again on a kind of secular, humanistic barrier against the divine, the eternal, the holy. And they didn't realize that they'd done that.
With just a sprinkling of neurotic also.
A sprinkling of neurotic.
Yes.
with the narcissistic circles.
Right.
And almost, there's no doubt that there could have been and there were things that could be addressed. There were immaturities in some way, but there also were profound riches as the church, mother and teacher, mater et magistra, was telling people how to navigate through this world according to the lodestar of orienting oneself toward eternity, toward the great dignity that each of us has. And this dignity somehow was diminished. And people said, just let everything go, let it all hang out. Don't attempt to that long and lonely journey towards self-control or self-discipline or self-denial. Am I correct?
And you're absolutely correct. And what did we end up with?
We ended up being so self-obsessed,
yes,
and so out of control that we couldn't take that wonderful moment where you find in every great story where someone has got a choice to make between self and other, and the courageous and beautiful choice that is made by the saint or by the hero, is not being made in our society. It's the choice now to fulfill yourself, do it what you want. It's not sacrificing yourself for the sake of some higher good, which is the heroic act in every great story.